Justin, Vay, you're growing. You're building. I was in your car last year at CES and it performed extremely well. How is Vay approaching teledriving?
Thanks for having us on. We're doing well. We've hitting into our 5,000th trip in Vegas. We have just decided to scale out our fleet there to about 150 vehicles by the end of Q2. So very, very interesting times. Very excited. The way we approach teledriving, unlike some other companies, is we started with the automotive engineering piece first. So fundamentally, we have made safety core to the business. And that means we have built an automotive safety case, which then also has hardware, an automotive safety controller. And that really is a lot of our secret sauce. How do we deal with the different engagements that a teledriver would have, all the way through, from the latency stack down to minimum rest maneuvers. So that's it. And then we've wrapped and kind of augmented the Silicon Valley software talent around that. And 5 to 6 years later, here we are. And it seems to be, that was a bit of a longer path and more expensive. It turns out that seems to be the path that was the right one, given our market position.
Why was the decision made early on to focus on the automotive safety case first?
Of the three founders, two of the guys had worked in the automotive space, one AV Automotive, and then Fabrizio, the CTO, had worked across all of the German automotives. And they realized very early on that to make this thing work with software is actually quite easy, but then the ability to put people in cars without safety, driver safety, operate in urban settings, actually the hard part is the safety part. And so very early on, they realized that would be probably the key differentiator. And so they spent a lot of time. They essentially slowed down, spent a lot of time on that, and then accelerated once they'd got that done. And that bit, if you know anything about the automotive space, that safety concept it sounds like a fairly easy thing to do if you're a non-automotive person, but it's incredibly difficult. Huge amount of money, lots of testing and validation. And then obviously we had the validation from the German roads authority across 3 different organizations, and we got a permit to drive without safety, driver or safety operator in public streets. And, Germany arguably has the highest safety standards, road safety standards in the world. And so that was testament to the strategic decision.
It was a strategic decision. In Germany, getting anything certified, or even in the EU for the matter of fact, is very difficult to say the least. As you've experienced, staying on the safety is where we get to business. Since you're teledriving, one of the critical safety elements is latency. How do you limit the latency to be as little as possible?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of elements, and you probably need someone smarter than me to go into detail. But essentially, it's around how you do your compression, how you channel bond and slice and multiplex the different radio frequency channels, and then also about making sure you don't have a single point of failure. So we have redundant networks. Our particular hardware is 4 modems. And so in theory, we can run 4 different networks. And so to lose contact with that car, you would need 4 networks to fail, which is, incredibly improbable. And then we've obviously built kind of some safety software in there. We also have our own, AI and autonomy team. And so if we do lose contact with that car, we can bring that car to a safe stop. But so there really is a lot of safety layers there. But fundamentally, it's about that network stack. And we have, I would argue, and it's been validated by the MNOs, the mobile network operators we've chatted to, we have probably the best network engineering team when it comes to this kind of service in the world. And these guys have spent a huge amount of time building out what we call VayNet. And yeah, that's a lot of our secret sauce. It's hard.
It's very hard to say the least. You have VayNet, you have the automotive safety. The next piece of the ingredient, what's the business model?
It's quite cool. So I'll tell you a little bit about the B2C pitch, which is what we raised our Series B on. It's kind of like click a button, get a car, And so if we bring you the car, teledriven, you drive yourself, and then we make it magically go away, we're going to charge you around about 50% less than ride hail. So on that basis, we still have a 20+% headroom on the business model there. So it's kind of super interesting that if you can do the trade where the person drives the car, you end up having the most affordable mobility, door-to-door mobility service in the world. And in a price-sensitive market, that's really interesting for people, as we're seeing in Las Vegas, with our current fleet and then driving at 150. Now, if you have that as your base cost structure, then when you want to sell it to our B2B partners, we find out that if we put the teledriving, the human component on our platform, there is actually an incredible amount of scale there. And so if we teledrive on behalf of our partners, you can save up to 40% on the driving component cost. And, that driving component cost is really difficult. The supply of drivers is declining. It's a super tough job. And so, if you can get that thing not only working in a high functioning way and save up to 40%, it's super interesting. And then the way in which we offer that to our B2B customers is quite simple. We have a turnkey solution. So kind of like software as a service for teledriving. Basically, we can do everything for you. The drivers, the network costs, the software, the tele stations, the network connectivity, all of that. And then you pay for what you use. But we've also then kind of decomposed each one of these product layers, and we've essentially productized all of that across 5 verticals. And so you can actually license or rent a key component. So if you only needed our networking stack, we can do a deal on that basis. If you just wanted the human teledriving element and software elsewhere, we could also do that. In fact, we have an AV partner whereby we've just done a deal where they're going to take the software components and the network components only. We found that the B2B partners, the commercial partners, enterprise partners want that flexibility. Because, if you think about this, it's uncertain how this thing plays out for them. If they're going to have massive scale, they will build their own operations teams, no doubt. But do you want to go and deploy multi-million-dollar infrastructure without knowing what and how big this is? I think that's still the question, and that's where we offer our platform, which gives them that cost saving.
Licensing is going to be the most profitable aspect of autonomy. You have individuals that are developing the full driving stack that will license to become very profitable. You have companies like Vay that are developing the teledriving stack, which become very profitable. Was licensing always on the roadmap from day one, or is that a recent development since you've joined the company?
No, it wasn't initially. It's a recent development, and it's got nothing to do with me. It's actually customer pull. So what we found, in fact, we weren't going to launch B2B. We had this B2C pitch, and that was the business model. And then we had a ton of inbound from car share, car rental, logistics, trucking, and then autonomous vehicles and governments, and all this inbound. And we're like, wow, geez, these are lots of different go-to-markets. It's actually, there's a lot going on here. And so what we've done, my BD team has spent the last 12 months engaging these partners to try and find out what is the strongest signal. And it turns out that the common thread through all of those is the licensing piece. And so at some point, as teledriving becomes more prolific and there is this kind of adoption, the licensing piece will get bigger. But I think fundamentally, we still need to offer our partners the on-ramp of being able to give this so-called turnkey solution. It's incredibly interesting. The way I think this thing plays out, I think, we might talk about that even later, but is that, to your point, it will be licensing. You'll find these companies start getting incredible scale on their own teledriving. And so they will want to have their own operation centers, similar to like they'd have their own driving teams. And then eventually it'll be a software kind of teleprocessing software cloud-based service that we offer. But still a way to go until then.
How many teledrivers do you need per vehicle, and could those teledrivers drive hypothetically different vehicles from different partners? I mean, are you going to build a teledriving warehouse where individuals are driving various different vehicles, or how is that going to work as you scale and as your partner scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're going to do exactly that. We'll have teledrivers that have multiple types of driving license, and they'll be able to drive multiple myriad selection of vehicles for myriad partners. And we will put it on, as much as possible, a single infrastructure. We might do separate instances. So if you have a luxury car maker and they want a white glove service, then we can, build out a separate instance and allow them to have their own customer script and engagement model. But fundamentally, to drive the economics on this thing, you want to try and put it on one platform. And so that's kind of what we are doing. And we've already inked deals and signed deals that let us do that. And again, obviously, the economics there passes through to the customer.
What are the economics of teledriving?
The stack, as I said, the plain vanilla version, which is freeing up the empty miles from, say, someone sitting in the car, is about 40%. That's on the B2B basis. On the B2C basis, if we run our own fleet, then we can make, I won't disclose it fully, but we make good margin, fundraisable margin at 50% lower than ride hail. So, and again, it depends on the city and the complexity of the operating domain. But the rule of thumb is we have a profitable business at half the price of teledriving. And the reason for that, as you and your listeners will know, is that we are kind of bringing those empty miles close to zero. And that's the efficiency that we get into the system. That's before we have our augmented kind of software enhancements and some of our AI.
Monetizing empty miles, which raises the other question, what's the use case for Vay? Is it a limited use case? Is it a wide use case? Or what type of customers do you see using Vay today and tomorrow?
Like I was saying, we've had inbounds from, luxury car segment and premium car segment. We've had from car share and car rental across the globe. We've had light commercial vehicle and middle mile logistics, supply chain logistics. We've had shipping ports, airports, off-road, and then long haul trucking. And we've literally had inbounds on all of that. And so I think fast forward, 3 to 5 years, there'll be $1 billion or multi-billion dollar teledriving category. And it will probably span across all of those use cases, because even if autonomous vehicle autonomy works in a lot of those use cases, it doesn't make sense to train models to do some of those use cases. It's just a lot more economical to have humans do it, a lot quicker, a lot easier to scale. So we think it's across all of that. I personally think that the car share use case is interesting. A la Zip is very, very interesting. And we see that as being able to unlock new total addressable markets for those kind of companies, because all of a sudden it's click a button, get a car. There's none of that friction. But I think the autonomous vehicle category is very, very interesting for us. And we're having a lot of really productive engagements there around assisted autonomy. So basically where you can't train a model because it's impossible or too expensive, then the teledriving can obviously fit there. And then, of course, if the car gets stuck or there's a system failure, teleops or teleassist doesn't work. You need to actually be able to drive the car. And so we're starting to see the teledriving or the remote driving capability as core to the success of autonomous vehicles being able to scale up. So those are two very, very interesting categories. And then trucking is also very interesting, because the trucking pass on, and you'll know this better than me, the trucking part of autonomy is pretty much solved on freeways. They can do that incredibly well. The difficult bit is the ingress and egress off the freeways to the distribution depot. And that is complicated. Again, you're getting into urban settings. And it turns out that a focused human being is actually a pretty good sensing and perception engine. And so, we just essentially basically teleport in, take control of the truck without it even stopping, and we're able to drive it to the depot, and then from depot back on the freeway, and then it seamlessly switches to autonomy. And so we've proven all of that out. So I think that'll be a huge category as well.
You're enabling autonomy companies in the early days of autonomy, if you want to use the term that's used all the time, level 2 plus or level 3 to scale. Overall, how do you see the telemarket evolving and changing over the next decade?
Yeah, like I was alluding to earlier, I think it's a multi-billion dollar category. I think, everywhere like seaports, they're just like unmitigated logistical disasters. And you have like 20 to 100,000 people going into them, and people are parked everywhere. It's, if you could have some kind of teledriving system there, you could move people way more efficiently there. And it's a very concentrated area. It's more private grounds. That's super interesting. Airports and baggage transfer can be done there too. It's just a lot cheaper. And so I think this, car share, car rental, it probably needs a lot of work. Car rental's not an easy one to do because you need quite a few cars to kind of affect the shape of that market. But if you imagine car rental, all of a sudden you don't need physical locations. You literally have dynamic supply wherever you need it in a city, between airports and city. Like that's a game changer. It's just going to take a little bit longer. And then trucking, and then the autonomous vehicle space. So I think it's a multi-billion dollar category, let's say in 5 years. And it's going to be integral to pretty much every form of future mobility, from autonomy even through to kind of electric buses in suburban areas, through to ports and what have you. It's incredibly interesting space, and there's just so much going on here. It's hard to kind of give it a narrow definition, frankly.
The bottom line is teledriving unlocks economic efficiencies. And Justin, we'll have you back on late in October to have a full conversation about Vay and where you're going. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is Vay. Justin, thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy Insights today.
Thank you very, very much for having us. Thank you.